they drain this oil before they brought it in. And I probably should have done that before now, but we've got 12mm bolts holding this reservoir on. All right, we've got a really long one there, so make sure all those come off. Our shift mechanism here, I'm going to go ahead and pull that off at this time. We've got probably a 10mm down below here, yeah, 10mm, and then we've got an Allen here on this side. This is a specialty bolt, so make sure you keep track of where this one is. All right, get that Allen out. I'm going to grab a 10mm wrench. I like to mark this. Sometimes they have a dot. It doesn't look like this model does. So I put a mark down here where my shift shaft is. That way I don't have to do a whole lot of thinking when going back together with this assembly here. I don't see a mark on here. Sometimes they put a little dot or a little line. That's not the case on here, so I will mark that. And we can take and slide this shaft off. Just kind of walk it off of there. So there's your shift assembly there, your shift linkages. We're going to go ahead and remove this stator cover here. So we've got our recoil pull starter. We've got our cup here, 17mm. I like to hang on to this. If you don't, your crank will spin over. So grab it with your hand there and hang on to that. There's your bolt that's in there. It's got an O-ring, so make sure that that gets replaced. And we've got our stator cover here. 8 and 10mm bolts all the way around this. Now when I'm taking these off, what I like to do is mark where they are, but I like to start on the top here, and I'll take them off in order, and I'll set them here in order. Now be careful, because what I did there was removed a couple bolts from the outside cover. That wasn't necessary. So I like to go around in order here, because they are different lengths. There. Take a rubber mallet then. And then there will be some pressure because this is magnetic in behind here. So make sure that O-ring gets replaced. Inspect that stator, test that. I'll show you a couple different tests on how to test the stator. And then we've got our gear reduction, our starter gears here. Those can come out at that time. Now we've got our cover. Now we could remove the flywheel at this time. Gasket in behind this, so make sure that gets replaced. And then being careful, when you tap on here, don't tap too high because up here could break easily, not a lot of support. So I like to tap down low here. A couple different places you can tap on this to loosen it up. I try to keep those gears in there. It doesn't always work. So we've got our cover off there. I'm going to tip this up. I want to show you how everything looks inside there. There is our cover off there. I'm going to tip that up so you can see it, and then I'm also going to pull that flywheel. All right, we've got a flywheel puller here. This is a Motion Pro 08-0086, and I can get you that puller if you're needing one. But you screw that on. What that does is screw into your flywheel there. When you tighten it up, it pushes against the crank and pops that flywheel off. So use a 22mm socket, depending on the brand of puller that you use. It might be a different size socket there. So go ahead and pull that off then. It just takes a little bit. If you can't get it off with an impact, I used a 1/2 inch impact like you saw there. and that is fairly strong, but a lot of times they're so tight on there that I'll take a hammer and just tap on that quick. What that does is kind of bounce it off of there, pulls it right off. So that if they're challenging to come off, you can do that. Flywheel puller can come out now. We're not going to use that again. We won't need that going back together. You want to make sure that you grab the bearing that's in behind that flywheel, the starter drive gear here. This is a one-way gear, so spins that way, doesn't spin that way. So that is when the starter's engaged, it will spin that over. A Woodruff key in here. You want to make sure that that doesn't go down in the motor. All right, got that out there. I like to just put that with the flywheel. Now we're going to dig into some of these gears here so you can see the assembly or the disassembly of this. We've got our shift drum here. And I like to just pull up a little bit on this fork shaft here. And that allows me to pull those shift forks out of the way. I'm going to set these here so you can see these as we pull them out. This shaft actually runs all the way through, so all we're going to be able to do at this time is pull this gear off. And then we'll see what else of this can be pulled off. So a lot of times you got to kind of break it free a little bit, and then you're able just to take them apart. We've got a washer that fell down there. We've got another washer up top here. And our shafts are seeming to stay, or want to stay, so I try to pull those all up at the same time. So that's that gear there, not a lot to that one. Our washer came from behind there, so that first small washer came from behind that gear there. And then there's a washer in behind that one too. So go ahead and set that back down kind of on that shaft there to hold everything together. And there is that gear there. So you've got your gear, we've got a slider there, another gear, a couple gears that spin there. We've got a slider there, and then we've got this gear with a spacer and a washer there. So that is that side of the transmission. And then we've got our shift drum here, like I said. We've got two 10mm bolts that we'll need to remove. They're putting pressure on this shift drum here. So 10mm. And I don't like to just pull that out super quick because there's a spring, a couple washers. I like to make sure that that all stays together. So keep that together. And then this is a holder here, held on with a 10mm. Whoops. So that's a holder there, just a 10mm in that holder. And then you're able to spin this drum to a spot that is will allow you to take it out of there. So, and you can see there, I'll remind you of this when we're going back together, there's a line here, it needs to line up with your line here. And this has to do with your electric shift. So you want to make sure that this is all intact. If you don't have those lines lined up there, your four-wheeler will not shift like it should. So we've got a snap ring here that needs removed. Like I said, this has to do with the electric shift. So we'll go around to the other side and I'll show you the rest of it. But we're able to pull this gear off. A lot of times these gears fail. They're so small, the splines are so small, and we can get pretty hard on those. So I'm going to pull it this time. I'm going to pull these two 10mm out and a handful of 8mm bolts, just because otherwise we're going to have to do that at some point. So we have an oil pickup here with a screen on it. Make sure that screen's cleaned out really well. And the same thing here. Make sure these screens are cleaned out as well. And then we've got 8mm bolts on the top there. And I think that's all of them for this side. So now we are ready on this side to split that cage.